Hello, welcome to episode 11 of Rooted, the Art Arbor podcast. I'm your host, Jake Vanderhayden, joined by Andrew Witter, and our special guest today is a very good friend of ours, Dr. Jordan VanHemert. And we are currently listening to a little clip from his recent album to top off the podcast today. This track is called Here and Now, and we're very excited to talk more about this album and everything that Jordan has been up to lately. Jordan has been someone that I've collaborated with over time on various projects. We first got introduced to each other at my high school band camp. Jordan was an instructor for our saxophone section, so another fellow saxophone player. And over time, we have worked on a few things. We started a nonprofit together called the Holland Concert Jazz Orchestra that was started in 2018 and is still well and alive today. We both also served as board members on the West Michigan Jazz Society, as well as some other side projects and things over time. But enough from me. Let's hear from Jordan. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Yeah, Jake, it really takes me back to hear you describe like what is ostensibly our origin story like that. It really takes me back.
Yeah, it's really cool that, then that was 13 years ago now, that we're still in touch and doing something.
And don't say that. Don't say that. You're going to make me sound old.
Maybe I am. I'm feeling old. But yeah, it's music education is a great thing. We can say that, but yeah, definitely tell us a little bit more about what you do and music education in general. That's one of your main endeavors these days.
Yeah. So what do I do? Okay, so I'm a saxophonist, composer, band leader, professor, and I'll kind of get into all of those things in just a minute here. So first saxophonist, I started playing the saxophone like most people. I was around like 11 years old or whatnot in my school's band program. And it's interesting because a lot of people have the opposite experience that I did. A lot of people are really drawn to like the classical side of the instrument and drawn to like concert band. And that's really cool. I'm so down with that. I think that's so great. I started off in sixth grade band getting really bored playing sixth grade band saxophone parts. And I was like, is there like literally anything else I can do? And my teacher was like, well, we have this jazz band and often the saxophone players, like they have more interesting parts. And even sometimes, saxophone gets the melody. So you could play some of those parts and it might be more interesting, but I don't let sixth graders do it. So you'd have to practice really hard. You have to promise me you practice really hard. And so I said, okay, I'll practice really hard. I want to be in this jazz band. And that, as they say, is kind of how it started. And ever since then, I've been in love with the music. I went to the library, checked out so many CDs. Back in the day, you didn't have playlists. You went to the library and checked out CDs, especially because you were able to check them out in a quantity that was far more accessible than if you had to pay for them yourself with my 11, 12-year-old budget. So, yeah. So after that, just trying to make it happen as a musician and then also to pass it on. I believe in sharing music greatly. I think you should share what you love. And I love this music so much. And so I always want to find different ways to share it with people. And one of those ways, as Jake mentioned, was through HCJO. And I wanted to share an expertise that I felt that I had. And I shudder even a little bit when I say expertise because I still believe that I have so much to learn about this music, and I'll be learning as long as I'm alive. But that being said, I think I do believe that promoting the music and advocating for it is really important, and so that's why we created HCJO. and I was looking for somebody like-minded. I think, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, but back in that day, I don't necessarily know that either of us really knew what we were doing in kind of the rabbit hole that we would be diving into, starting a nonprofit. You can go ahead and correct that statement if I'm wrong, but
yeah, I think it was just let's do this thing and let's see where it goes. I know you had reached out you had recently been coming back to the area after being out of West Michigan for a while, and you're just wanted something, like you said, to spread what you knew and the joy of the music, and to reach some people. So we were like, let's get this thing going. Jordan, I think you had said, hey, I need some help with the logistics, the marketing, the business side of things, because you were like, I'd rather focus on the directing side of things, which is kind of, the core of a lot of things that we're doing with Art Arbor is, the artists want to do artist things. They don't want to do paperwork and marketing and things like that. Of course, not to say that you didn't do any of those things. We had a pretty joint hand in a lot of that, but that was the capacity that I served in for the most part, was all the behind the scenes work, and that was really interesting. But we were along this journey together, between figuring out how to pay for things and a budget, and getting this website built initially. They have taken with it and improved it, and
a lot.
I would say they're thriving right now. I would say
so too.
Both of us stepped away a few years ago, just with both of us moving out of state. It was harder for Jordan and I to keep the involvement that we had with it, but the team there has continued it on, and definitely check them out if you're in the West Michigan area, or even all over. They're going all over the state now. I've seen, so
yeah, doing a lot of really great stuff. And I will say, you made a comment about how, I was like, yeah, I just really want to handle the artistic direction of this stuff, and then I ended up doing a lot of paperwork and stuff like that with you and whatnot. But one of two things I think to take away from that. First of all, we started the band because we really believed that people should be paid for art. We believed that art was something that you can do to make a living, and we wanted to, in whatever small way, to support that. And so at the time, we were paying a lot more for a big band gig than some of the other groups. And I was very proud of that, because I want, it's like the group, I wanted the group to be musically sustainable and also financially sustainable, because both of those are important for a career as an artist in this day and age. And I would say even it has changed since we started that organization. Having a career as an artist has changed. And that leads me to the second thing, which is I think naively sometimes artists will think, oh, I don't want to handle that logistical stuff. I just want to, do the art part. But when you become an artist, you have to take care of business. Like, you have to really take care of business. So like when I book all my own tours. I do all my own booking. I do the marketing myself. I do, all of my own, like when it comes to like scheduling recordings and handling all of the logistics with that, I do all of that myself as well. And so I think we're in a day and age where the artist truly is an entrepreneur. And some people are not ready for that. Which I think is cool, because that's something that really, honestly, you kind of learn on the job anyway. But it's funny that I did say that to you. I remember saying that, Jake, but it has not played out that way in my life. Yeah.
I'd say that was definitely a first principle thinking. I know another thing that you really wanted was to bring really high quality and a mix of modern and traditional repertoire for the music to the area. Just to have something in that, specifically in the Holland, Michigan area. There had been a Holland jazz orchestra in the past, but there had been a large gap of time even before the pandemic where there had not been much happening in that Lakeshore region in West Michigan. So to bring an ensemble like that to the area, and like you mentioned as first principle, that these people were also going to get paid to do that. And for those not familiar, the big band format is typically a 16 to 20 member ensemble, typically somewhere in there. It depends on if you add some extra percussion or whatnot. But compared to a typical 3 to 5 piece jazz combo, it is a challenge to find the right venue and programming and funding and et cetera to pull that off. And then, on top of all of that, we were a nonprofit, so it had its pros and cons there. I think a lot of times there are more pros there. You can receive donations, you can receive grant funding, things like that. So that's definitely one way I think musicians have and continue to navigate the finances of making all of these things possible is through some of philanthropy and grant money and things like that to make sure that people are compensated correctly for their art.
Well, I would not say that we necessarily compensated people correctly. I don't think any big band gig necessarily, unless you're playing in one of the top working groups, compensates people correctly. I think that's not, and that's not a dig on anybody. That's just that's circumstance. That's what can we do here? And the reality of the matter is, if you're paying people for the value that they bring, they are bringing in a large jazz ensemble a far greater value than a lot of the times what you're able to pay them for, just because of the simple economic principles of supply and demand. We have a greater supply of big bands in a lot of cases than there is a demand for. And so a lot of the time, if you want a gig doing that, you need to go knocking on the door for that. And when you go knocking on the door, they're not always going to pay you a lot of money. So, that's cool. Again, you have to find a way to make, what you do sustainable. And I think a lot of people will see a big band gig as what I call an opportunity gig. It'll be an opportunity to connect with other great musicians who are like-minded from you. That band connected so many great individuals around West Michigan. And another principle that I wanted to highlight based on something that you said, Jake, was when we started HCJO, it was to fill a void. There was a vacuum and in West Michigan. And I thought, there's not a group that's doing something that I want to do and that I'm passionate about. And I always tell my students, you have to create your own market. And you have to look for the area where what you're passionate about and the thing that really, I say, sets you on fire and you have to look at that and then what the market needs. There was not a big band on the Lakeshore other than Truth and Jazz, and Truth and Jazz is great. But not everybody, even as close as Muskegon is, not everybody was making that trek. And so, there was a vacuum. And so, like, entrepreneurship wise, you have to consider your market. And I would say that your market sometimes is even more important than what you yourself think and want to do. Now, the opposite can be true. There are people I know who are like, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And then the market responds and says, oh, I'm cool with that. I think that's really, really hip. So let's buy into that. It doesn't always work like that. And I think, again, part of entrepreneurship is being nimble, being really flexible. I remember, Jake, in those early days, there were times when it was like, we had to pivot quickly because we noticed something that was not successful, or it was not as successful as we wanted it to be. And so we had to pivot fast. Otherwise, as is the case in, nonprofit leadership, you're getting ready to not exist in 6 months to a year. So you had to pivot really quickly. So Jake, I thought you brought out so many great points, about that early journey of HCJO. And it's one that I remember so fondly, and I think Keith Walker is doing such an excellent job with the stewardship of the group. Dr. James Sawyer is doing such an excellent job, with the music direction. And I'll just say, yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing to see.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on one last thing. We had formulated over time with our board of the HCJO our 3 pillars, and kind of the ongoing motto is advocate, educate, and perform. And I think, that from the beginning was something that we wanted to do between, advocacy for musicians and just the art in general, making sure some of these things were addressed, like we discussed. Obviously, performing this music, but then, the piece we haven't touched on much was education. We wanted to make sure that the group was an opportunity for musicians to learn in a professional, high caliber ensemble like this, as well as the annual soloist festival that we introduced, where local high school jazz musicians could come, audition and display what they had for the community and with the group, and then an opportunity to play at a concert with the group. And that's continued on to this day. And being able to really pass it on, because that's so critical in this music. It an oral tradition, and continuing, not just to perform for your own purpose, but to perform for the community and for the younger generation. I think it's so important, and it's a critical piece of continuing on with art and making sure that it's thriving, is that advocacy and education continuing on. And I think it really came full circle, like I mentioned, that Jordan had been in that role with me. And then, Keith Walker, you mentioned, who's now running the ensemble, was one of Jordan's former teachers. So to see it come full circle and pass down multiple generations of music education to make something happen and continue on, that's the power of all of that.
Special.
But I wanted,
really special.
yeah.
Well, I think it goes to show you, when you are mission driven, like, just like Simon, have you seen that TED Talk with Simon Sinek? They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that drives us as entrepreneurs, as artists, to be mission-driven people. And so, when you have a mission like that, I think really that's what people will really buy into. And we found that, with our funding structure, what people were buying into was not necessarily that, oh, there's this great band. People were buying into our mission. People were buying into that we had a strong sense of purpose, and that we were a mission-driven organization. Yeah, I think and that's a really beautiful thing.
I want to dive back into everything that we were talking about with entrepreneurship more. Of course, that's a huge focus for us. And this is obviously one example of your entrepreneurial efforts as an artist. But before we dive into some of your current projects and things outside the education space, I want to go into the education space, because I know you've recently started a music business course that you've been teaching, and I'd love to hear more about that, and how you're bringing some of these ideas that you've mentioned to your students as well.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think something that I really struggle with, and I hope it's okay that I'm being sort of open with not being like, I have it all together, because I don't. But something that I really struggle with is this notion of jazz education. And yeah, I'm a jazz educator. What does that mean? That means that I teach a music in a university that was once taught almost exclusively on the bandstand. And is now facing down a shall we say, just a kind of a reputation of being somewhat gentrifying to what is ostensibly a Black American art form. How do I deal with that as an Asian American? I struggle with that a lot. And so in my own work, I am always really pointing to the jazz tradition. And I want to make ways for my students to learn this music the way that I've been most shaped by it. I have 3 degrees in music. The things that I have learned the most about music, let's just say the situations in which I have learned the most about music are the things that happen outside of the classroom. It's jam sessions playing with people who are better than me. It's recording with people who know more than me. It's being in the presence of incredible musicians like Lewis Nash and Rodney Whitaker, who have been gracious enough to give their time to not only recordings but other performances, and who have, to me, been such incredibly invaluable people in my own life. And notice how I didn't just say musicians, I said people, and we'll kind of get to that in a second. But so jazz education, what do I do? Well, I always want my students to be diving deep into the music and going straight to the source. So I talk about oral learning. I talk about, records a lot. I know jazz theory. I enjoy jazz theory. I love harmony. But for me, the thing that makes jazz jazz is rhythm. It's that rhythm. It's rhythm. So I talk a lot about rhythm, and I talk about a groove and pulse. And that's a really big. It's almost become a meme in the jazz ensemble that I teach. A little bit. It's almost become a meme because I talk about it so much. But I was telling my bass player, he was like, I think he was doing an impression of me one time, and and I was like, is that what I sound like to you? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's fair. I totally get it. And I was like, but to be fair, when you have the experience of playing in a group and you can feel the quarter note pulse, you can feel the ride cymbal, and you can feel the drums and really, really click in and lock in. The harmony of the piano talking to the drums, you hear that conversation. There is no feeling like that at all. That is an irreplicable thing. I can't even barely describe it to you. It feels like you're flying. It feels the feeling is like none other. And when I play with a group like that, and when I'm able to be a part of that, that is one of the most joyful experiences that I have ever had in my life. And I've been thankful, grateful, blessed to be in that situation a number of times. And I think, I want to share that joy with my students. But that joy doesn't come without work, and it doesn't come without dedication to the music. And that means I can kind of be a little intense sometimes, but it all comes from love. It's tough love is what it is. And it's the tough love that I was given, from my teachers. But it, to me, is really important to share that joy, because there is truly nothing else like it. There's nothing else like this music, although this music does influence a lot of other things. But people around the world, everywhere you see, will acknowledge how special this music is. So when I'm given the responsibility to teach, students in a degree granting program, which is what I have, it's really important to me to hearken back to that jazz tradition, and to hearken back to, or to point back essentially to that jazz is Black American music, that it comes from centuries of oppression and struggle, and that the music comes out of, it is something that has emerged from civil rights and partnered alongside civil rights. And I can't, this is why I love teaching jazz history so much. You can't have a jazz education program and sideline the inherent Blackness of the music. But you might say, oh, you're not Black. How you do that? I put my students in front of direct people in the lineage of the music. And then for my own professional development, I put myself in the company of those people as well, who are gracious enough to share with me. So jazz education, yeah, it's really important to me. and my job is really important to me, and definitely, you know, but I mean, I'm a student of the music too. And sometimes I think we as professors, especially academics, we need to acknowledge that we are all students of the music.
Well said. And I really, it's such like a beautiful picture painting. And I know Jake mentioned you're doing a business course potentially now. How is that relationship working? Is it very much a business class, or are you talking to musicians, or is it a mix of both?
That's
What's
such a
that dynamic like?
No, it's cool. It's such a great question. The course that I teach is music business and entrepreneurship. And I always feel weird about teaching the course because I'm like, you can't learn music business from a textbook. You can't learn entrepreneurship. You have to get out there and do it.
Very similar to music.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with the curriculum, I'm all about using my experiences, telling my students, here's how to, book a tour or book a gig. And I'm always updating, my stuff because it changes, what is most effective and not. I'm talking to my students a lot about, about how to create it, how to work a creative project, whether that's a record or a big concert, a performance, a recital, how to really have your own point of view on that, that creative work. So yeah, I teach that class. And every time I teach it, I think it kind of shows me what I need to do in my own life, to grow my own artistry. And so it's been an incredibly valuable experience.
I heard this the other day. I'm not sure where the origination is, but it's the teacher benefits greater than even the student. And the more we share knowledge with people, we get this really interesting kind of feedback loop. To your point, yeah.
The more I teach, the more I learn. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it makes me stronger to know what, to be teaching for sure. And yeah, it's such a cheeseball thing, but it's so true. My students teach me as much, if not more, than what I teach them. And I will say that, and people, listeners might be like, well, that's really cheesy, but anybody who's taught knows that.
Yeah.
And we get more from our podcast guests than we get from ourselves.
There you go. Love it.
Exactly. That's the beauty of being out in the world with other people and hearing what they have to say, and why we find so much joy in doing conversations like this on the podcast. I was wondering, with that course, what would you say would be like a few major takeaways? Like at the end of the semester, the students are walking out. What do you want them to know going into the world after being with you in that course?
It's not knowledge, actually. It's not what I want them to know, but it's what I want them to have. I refer to this course as kind of packing your suitcase for a journey. Nice. And you got to have like your bio. You got to have your EPK going. You got to have, a website that's not embarrassing. You got to have like, some semblance of a knowledge about social media these days. And then you also have to hone your craft and the philosophy behind your craft, that you have an authentic, and notice how I didn't say innovative or original, I just said authentic point of view on what it is that you do. And so like I said, I would say that it's not a thing where I want people to have like know a bunch of stuff. I want them to have practical tools for how to navigate this career in music. And the reality of the matter is that once I teach the class, it becomes obsolete, the information that I share. So what I really teach students is that you have to be nimble and flexible. You have to, here are the basic tools, but in reality, these things may change, and they have changed since I have been, teaching and out of school, etc.
It is like almost inherent that it will change. To your point, it's only going to change. The deeper and deeper I've been into digital marketing, it's literally on almost a daily basis now with AI, how fast things are changing. I mean, you just got to be on top of it all the time.
Well, and AI has been so, exponent. The change since the kind of onset of AI has really been exponential. It's something that I don't think any of us really as creatives were prepared for. And I think there is a generation who's kind of like my generation and older, kind of being like, what? Like, what do we do with this? So, and
Yeah.
I think among those generations are people who are really forward thinking and have kind of like thought, okay, this is kind of where I want to, take this. But yeah, it's with AI, it's been huge, the change. And I will not pretend to understand everything about AI. There, I for sure will not even pretend to understand everything about it. And I think, like everything, it's there are some real positives to it, but there are also some strong negatives. But to a lot of people's fears, I don't think that that there would ever be any AI that could ever completely replace artists. I think a lot of people are afraid of that. But the inherent humanity in artists is what is our is what we it's our superpower. So no, it's is there going to be ever like a perfect tune? No, not really. No.
I hope not. Yeah.
You can write one with AI maybe and write this perfect, let's just say a perfect copy of like a Thad Jones tune or something with AI, whatever. And maybe AI knows how to make that, but it's inherent in humanity is kind of what I think makes it not as appealing. People want to know that there's like a human. I think that there's like a human involved in art, because art is the expression of what it means to be human.
Absolutely.
And there is no AI that can tell you that.
We love to bring up this concept on the pod here of HI, human intelligence, and I hope you take that with you, that the power of HI, which we were inspired by the great will.i.am when we saw him speak last summer about HI in the vast expanse of AI out there, that's what will persist. And I think my half cup full for all of this craziness going on right now is that it's going to push us towards actual artists, because I think we're going to see all of this AI. There's so many cool things AI can do, but you're going to start to see all these things that are just inauthentic, and people are going to crave the authentic, and that's what's going to hopefully propel artists forward, I think. And the other benefit that we see of AI is maybe it'll take away a lot of these tasks and things that artists even have to do themselves, and allow them to focus more on what they're doing. And also, if AI takes away some of the industriousness of society, takes away some of those tasks that take us away from working on art, that maybe more people can become artists too. So we try to have rose-colored glasses on, and have that half cup full. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. We try to talk about it a lot, and definitely have to be nimble. I like that theme today of being nimble in the conversation so far. Speaking of being nimble, you have continued to put out project after project in all of your spare time between all these other things that you're doing. And we introed your album earlier, but would love to hear more about this project that is currently you're in your release right now, what you've been up to, and we have a track or two pulled up as well. We'd like to do some listening. So why don't you start us off with more about the album Survival of the Fittest, Jordan?
Yeah, this project is really something I think that I've wanted to release for a while, and it's based on a Japanese proverb: "Fall 7 times, stand up 8." And it's about perseverance. It's about not letting difficult circumstances get you down. It's a very universal human thing to go through tough times. And I think, here's the title track. Yeah. So I'll intro the title track and we can listen to a little bit of it. But basically, I wrote this tune and it was kind of rooted in difficult circumstances. But the reality of it is that it turned out to be an anthem of perseverance. Like, people are like, this does not sound angry. And I was like, well, I mean, I guess I get that, but I guess what it became was it was more of an anthem of perseverance and, never letting things get you down. So yeah, this is Survival of the Fittest, the title track of the new record.
Yeah, that's swinging.
You had to make sure we heard some of Jordan's solo first.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure,
Just before the solo.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
cool.
If it was up to me, we'd listen to the whole album right now. But I know
I don't know that
we only
that's
have limited time.
maybe the most productive way to use a podcast. But I'm flattered that you would say that. Thank you.
Let's make sure we acknowledge and give some love to the band. Could you talk a little bit more about who's on the project?
Yeah,
Sure. That tune was a quintet tune, and it featured Terrell Stafford on the trumpet. He teaches out at Temple University as the director of their program, and is a legendary trumpet player, an incredible human being. Helen Sung, the top pianist on the New York scene. The legendary Rodney Whitaker on the bass, who's the director of jazz at jazz studies at Michigan State University, and just a really incredible and brilliant human being. And aside from killing it on the bass, and the great Lewis Nash on the drums, who is just, man, there is no stopping that guy. Like, he really kind of is proof that age is just a number. He really, like, it just plays with the vitality of, of just generations past, and it is really a joy, to work with him. Yeah, so that's the band on that track, and it's something that that I've really relished the opportunity to work with those musicians.
So speaking of the power of collaboration and networking and community building, through all of your records of recent memory, including this one, of course, how did you bring the Avengers together, so to speak? How did the Avengers assemble?
Well, it's what you kind of just what you said. It's people knowing people. I've been recording projects with Rodney Whitaker for about 3 or 4 years. And we started recording together because of my good friend Jeff Schaup. Jeff had said, "Have you thought about calling Rodney for this recording session?" We were doing a small session for just kind of like a Christmas arrangement. Christmas time is here with strings, and he was like, "Have you thought about calling Rodney?" And I was like, I'm like, Rodney Whitaker's not taking my gig. Like he's not. I was like, man, he's so good, and he's like on so many of the records that I just I loved growing up. Pursuance, the Kenny Garrett record. That's the music of John Coltrane. That record that I wore out. He's on that, and I was like, he's not doing this. But through Jeff, and Jeff was like, yeah, you should come play this gig. And I was like, okay. And he said yes. We were able to kind of, and ever since then, it's been a joy every time I'm able to get on the bandstand or in the studio with Rodney. But I think mainly it's, for me at least, it's about, number one, showing humility in what you don't know, and understanding the contributions of who it is that you're working with. And then, of course, having people who can connect you, mentors and other figures. And in the case of Lewis Nash, that was a kind of a Michael D's thing. He was producing both of these projects. And he said, "Hey, Lewis, do you want to come and play on this project?" And he's like, "Who's this dude?" And then it's the people in your life like that advocating for you, saying, "Hey, this project has my stamp of approval on it, and it will, a certain level of quality will be had." And so that's, kind of how we got folks together.
Yeah, it's really powerful when you just have one relationship and it builds to another relationship, which builds to another relationship, which I think is what you just described in less words. But it's so important, I think, as artists, to not exist in a vacuum.
Sure.
We mentioned on the podcast here, especially with the digital landscape now, we're excited about ways for people to collaborate more online, but I think that in-person experience just cannot be replicated quite yet with the tech that we have. But it's important to, for any type of artist, go to a show, go to a jam session, go to a gallery, go to a networking event, entrepreneurship event, meet people that aren't artists per se. And just network with people, because you never know where something's going to lead. Network is net worth, as cheesy as it is. I think that's absolutely true in today's day and age.
Well, and I think it's about more than networking, maybe, in how we think about it in the traditional sense. I really have grown to, I get the word networking. I've grown to really hate it as a concept and as a word, because I think it gets kind of twisted into this transactional, what can you do for me kind of vibe,
Totally.
And it's really not about that. It's about earnestly forging connections with people who you just want to be around. And I don't, I didn't forge a connection with Rodney Whitaker just so that, he could bring me other artists or whatever. When I connected with Helen Sung at another university that I was at, I wanted to bring her in to work with my students, and to so that she could really be kind of a light in our program. it was not because I wanted her to do this record, although it, that was kind of, she knew who I was from that, and so it's a lot of things, but I would say networking, it's just such a transactional word, but I also don't know what to call it. What else do you call it? Like, what else do you call it? And frankly, I just think, when you talk to this thing about students, it gets really misconstrued because everybody wants a shortcut, and there are no shortcuts to art. There are no shortcuts to having a career in music, particularly this music. There are no shortcuts. And the sooner that people are able to acknowledge that, the better, and I have a lot of respect for people who are trying to do this art, as a living. But there are no shortcuts, and that's not like really a thing that we can, that we can talk about. So like, I just worry that sometimes we have this idea that what we would construe as or call networking is construed by others as kind of like a kind of a shortcut thing. And and moreover, there was the reason I want to mention that I was really intentional about bringing, I believe art should be intentional. I was intentional about bringing bands like this on board. You always want to, I think, seek the wisdom of the elders in this music. So many times I think like people, and especially, again, I will say of a certain age, will hire out a band of people, their age and younger, which is cool. It's good to have like working groups who are like really, playing together, because that's what Miles Davis was doing. But he was also seeking out people who were not like him, and who had different, sort of different perspectives. And I just remember, you can find it on YouTube or what have you, but Herbie's story about when he first recorded with Miles Davis, and kind of how that came together. And I think there is a time and place for kind of, this vibe, but it's also, I think a lot of people will seek validation from people who have as much experience as them and less. And it's not like I'm seeking validation from my elders. I'm just seeking their wisdom. I want to be educated, by them. I want the bandstand to be my classroom. Because then when I go back to the classroom that I teach in, I'm able to bring that much more back. And that's really important to me, to be able to bring back knowledge from practical experience.
I want to touch on this networking piece. Like a reframe that I had to go through to take out the transaction of it, to your point, was community building for me, was brand building. Because when you go to these events and you put a face to a name, you give off a certain energy and a character. And when you do this, you are essentially building your brand. People will remember who you are, hopefully. And from there, that is then this sort of network that is then created, that you can have transactions with, but it's not a transactional relationship.
I think
that's fair. I like that community building aspect. That's a really good reframe, building community.
I think an important takeaway too, aside from there's no shortcut in art, that there's no shortcut in human connection, I think is a huge part of this. If you want people to authentically engage with you, if you're just there networking as a transactional relationship, like, oh, I'm here because I want you to do this for me. Like, the whole idea of a job fair is kind of weird to me. Like, I'm going to, come to this thing and the whole thing is transactional. Like, they're looking for you, you're looking for them. Like, there's no authenticity to that. Like, I've been to them, and honestly, at least for me, nothing has ever came of a job fair. I anything that's happened in work that I've done is really through relationships, you know, really getting to know people, and, you know, or like over time, like Jordan, like from the beginning of this podcast, you know, Jordan and I had already had a relationship over time. You know, Jordan didn't necessarily come to me to start the HCJO on a transactional basis, right? Like in building that team, it was like, I think you would be interested in this and you want to do this because because he must have felt that I could align with the mission. It wasn't because he was trying to use me or something, right? So that's the whole concept, I think, is that you need to be authentic. And, I think everything I said before this holds true, but I think Jordan added another lens onto that term is just kind of cold, right? It doesn't help you feel the human experience when you're just intentionally trying to expand like that. I think things fall into place where they need to, and things come with time.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the job fair thing. I've never had a job. I don't even know that I've ever gone to a job fair. I don't think I've ever been to one, but I do know that, like, the sort of thing that you're talking about, of course, and I know what a job fair is. But it's because of that transactional nature that I just never felt comfortable with it.
And we were talking off the pod about taking the transaction out of marketing and out of some of these more business oriented things that just kind of are inherent with today's lens of and reality of being an artist. And so for you, what ways have you gone about taking some of that transaction out of, getting more shows, booking, recording more records as you do expand your performing? In what ways are you consciously removing that and focusing elsewhere, non-transactional?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I will say it's something that I'm still working on. Like I'm still trying to find ways because, as an artist, so much of what we do, it's like, yeah, look at touring. Okay, you buy a ticket to come see my show, and you show up, I play music, you leave. So in that respect, I always like to try to connect with people when I'm at shows like that. If somebody wants to come up and say something to me after a show, I'll always do it. I'll always talk to people. Even if I'm like putting my horn away and doing whatever, I'm always happy to talk to people. I think that's a small step. It is very basic. I like to set up times where I'm able to connect with folks, and to just talk to people and connect with them on a human level, not even necessarily about the music, but who are you? Who is this person who has chosen to come and to join me for what is, what could be replicated elsewhere? You could just listen to you could just stream the record. You didn't have to come out, to hear me, to hear a show. Like, you didn't have to do that. So I think already in choosing that, the audience actually makes the first step of being non-transactional or moving away from a transactional mindset, because they're saying, well, I could just stream this on Spotify for the price of my whatever $9.99 account, but I want to come hear it live. And that I think a lot of artists don't necessarily recognize.
Absolutely.
And so then I do think, artists should respond in kind if they're at all able. Now, I will say there is a point where, and I am not at this point, just to clarify, but there is a point where, like, at a certain time, yeah, if you're, say, Ron Carter, you cannot necessarily take time to connect with every single person at your gig, because you get mobbed by like thousands of people after the gig, and that's cool. But I'm saying for independent artists, this is a really important kind of step. Another thing that I have thought about is, in terms of, the transactional nature of things, I like to try to follow up with people and contact people, particularly when they order my sheet music and my concert music, and just saying, hey, thanks for programming this. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, let me know. If I can ever, hop on a Zoom or something with you to, to give some insights about the piece, I'd be more than happy to. Or maybe you've got it all figured out, and that's cool too. But I think I'm still working on this because we are taught to think that it's like, oh yeah, this is transactional. You buy a ticket, you get a show, and that's kind of this money in, money out sort of thing. But I don't actually subscribe to that, and I'm always looking for new ways, to make what I do less transactional. Because and I'll give you an example. My album artist, Nico Lee, working with her has been really incredible, and she's a really great human being. And but from the very beginning, it was a way. Yes, of course, I would get album art out of it, but I really wanted her to stretch in terms of her creativity. And so I wanted to see her creativity manifest in this particular way of album art. And, she had done it for a bunch of other artists, but she, was, I was like, well, maybe you would have something to say about this record as well. And that's the image. It's Nico's image of the bamboo that's on the front cover. And you see all this subtlety, like little smoke and, billowing up from the bamboo, and this nod to the elements and even the colors, that she chose were really, were really important. And so I think, it's that sort of thing. But I'm always open to suggestions, and I'm curious, even to turn it around on you all, but what you guys have kind of gotten into and kind of working through this yourselves, as Art Arbor.
Yeah, I definitely think, conversations like this are a way to foster that non-transactional behavior. For us, it's like we're not asking for much in return from anyone on here except for their time, of course, and sharing it on to others. A lot of what we do right now, providing the quality conversations, quality information, how-to guides, more things coming. We have so much on the back burner because we really don't want to put something out if we don't feel that we can stand behind it. But a lot of statements about how the industries that many artists are involved with have become extremely transactional. I know one that we could probably get really deep into is musicians being compensated for streaming specifically. But that's one thing that we want to focus on is basically how can we put out these ideas into the world and bring expertise and technology together. And really, as we touched on earlier, when you mentioned knowing your market and knowing the conditions of the market, that's so important. As artists now really have to be entrepreneurs, because the model of to keep with the music trend here, the model of the record label doing everything for you has kind of passed for most artists, and it's really opened an opportunity for artists to be independent and to put things forward for themselves. But it's presented all of these new challenges of really having to also wear all of these entrepreneurial hats, not just the artist hat. So I think a lot of this wisdom is super important, that beyond the relationships that you need in your art, you need these other relationships in the greater market as well. And the market has a lot of players. The most important stakeholders in the market are, I don't like to use the word customers for art, but your community. I mean, with most art, there's participatory art, but there's typically an artist and an audience, right? There's someone that's engaging with your work and building a non-transactional, engaged community around your work is critical nowadays to really build your market. Because if everything is about what can I sell to these people and how can I make the most money off of them as possible, that's probably not going to work for you as an independent artist trying to grow, that authentic community, and bringing those people together around conversations surrounding your work and the work of your collaborators is really how you will grow. And that's what we're hoping to do with our community in general from First Principles here, is that we're a community of artists and of art appreciators and of entrepreneurs and all of the above, coming together to expand on this for each individual that's involved in the community. That collective really is the power of people, I think.
To like really directly answer your question, Jordan, how are we with this non-transactional experience? For us, it's creating those unique experiences, the non-scalable unique experiences, kind of like what you're talking about with talking to people after shows. You're creating a unique interaction with the person who is your community member, who is listening, partaking in your artwork, transacting with you on some level, but also emotionally connecting energetically by showing up to those shows, by deeply enjoying your music and creating those unique experiences. Disney does this obviously at scale. That's what makes the magic of Disney, is they're able to give such unique experiences. Let's say you go to their parks, you're going to have a little magical moment. And so that's kind of what we do with some of our, surprise and delight opportunities, is creating these unscalable, scaled, unique moments with the people in our community. And I think all of the greatest brands do this to some degree, but the biggest one I think at scale that's doing it is the parks at Disney. But that's how we do it with our people. So when I talk to someone and they say, "Oh yeah, I listened to your podcast," that is a perfect opportunity to really connect with that person on that level. And was like, "Oh, want to learn more about it?" And we just start having these wonderful conversations. And that to me is how I'd want to spread my brand, or spread my network, or spread my community, or however you want to put it, is having these unique experiences that are truly authentic.
Yeah, I think that doing the non-scalable things first is important, because I think a lot of people try to do the scalable things and expand quickly, but as we
no shortcuts. Remember,
yeah,
no shortcuts.
no shortcuts in business and art or human connection, right? You have to I want to share a little motto. It's actually the motto of Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's rocket company. But it's gradatum ferociter, which is in Latin. It basically, the meaning of it translated to English is basically step by step with ferocity, right? And it means that you have to continue on every day without taking any shortcuts. And I think putting in that work is what allows you to get to something. I mean, to bring the analogy of why we love our theme of Art Arbor, or the name of this podcast, Rooted, is that you have to plant a seed and you have to water it and you have to give it time and light and energy and all of these things for it to grow into a seedling. And then that seedling needs even more of that stuff over time to become a tree, and then to become an arbor, a collection of trees, right? We have to have these deep roots. So it kind of illustrates all the imagery and the meaning of our name and our mission in general, is that it really takes a collective. An arbor is a collection of trees together, right? It's not just a single tree. And that if you get into the root systems of trees, it's nuts. I mean, Andrew just posted a video the other day about how trees send signals with their scents to alert each other of invasive insects. So, I mean, if trees, that's pretty sick. Yeah. I mean, if there can be that collaboration amongst trees, then I'm sure we have a lot to learn from the trees, of course. But
we do, yes.
As rational human beings, I think there's a lot that we can do with that collective. And so join our arbor.
Give us a like and a follow.
Give us a like and a follow, subscribe to our Substack, all that good stuff. But yeah, as I know we've had a great session here. I wanted to make sure we touched on kind of what you've been up to lately and what's coming soon, Jordan. I know you just recently done a tour in Korea, and you have a lot more planned with the album here. So share all the things that we should know about that.
Sure. Yeah, it was great this past May and April to be in Seoul, and to be just really, absolutely, like, thrown into the Korean jazz scene. And it's really cool because, I think there is there's like a really beautiful kind of conversation happening over there about art. And I think I always, the audiences over there, are for the most part pretty good. I think depending on where you go, and every audience is different, but people aren't really trying to talk during the bass solo, kind of a thing. And that's really nice, because I recently had the opportunity to interact with Daryl Davis. He did a presentation here, and if you don't know who Daryl Davis is, he's a former pianist and keyboardist with Chuck Berry, but he has been responsible for converting a number of ex-Klansmen. And one of his tenets of kind of living is everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to feel like they're, loved, treated fairly. And, when I am in Korea, I feel like people like really are interested in hearing artists and are hearing musicians. And that's a really cool feeling, because at its heart, you might get pissed off at somebody talking during the bass solo, but they are violating your human need, and your human kind of right to be heard. And that deep need we have, as humans. So I that was, an incredible trip. And, you can find more about that on my IG and stuff. But I have a bunch more CD release events coming up, going coast to coast, actually. Next week I'll be in New York, and then in the following months I will be back over to I'll be in San Francisco, in the Pacific Northwest, Denver, etc. The Midwest, of course, I'll be doing a Midwest stint in 2026. I'll be in the South, in Texas. And I'm so excited about the opportunity to share this project with people and what it means to me. And I hope that in these kinds of situations, that it would show people who are going through something difficult right now, that I see them, and that this music would be a balm to their weary soul, because it certainly was to mine, writing it. And it was very, very much, something that really helped me process a lot. And so I'm hoping that for the same thing for people to kind of get from that record. And then I'm working, actually, this, I've barely told anybody this, but I'm working on my next project as a leader, and that details will emerge for that in 2026. And kind of the what follows. So I'm just always looking for new opportunities to create and share music with people. And one of the things that I think I really just want to do is just be part of this greater conversation that's happening with this music, and to honor those who came before me. And that's kind of a little hint as to kind of the project. So thank you, both of you, so much for having me. It's been just an incredible conversation with you two. You have always been deep thinkers, having been, around around you both for a number of years. And that goes to for the entire Art Arbor team, Andrew Peters as well, and shout out to my incredible former student and constant inspiration to me, Tim Greamy. So it just goes to show you, when you create communities around art, it really does pay off, and I think trees thrive really well around other trees.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap here, I hate to talk over the bass solo as we just said, but we'd love to play a little clip of the album here on the way out of another track. What would be the perfect track to play us out, Jordan?
I don't know what the perfect track would be.
What's a track to play us out? Yeah.
What's a track? You can. You know what? I wanna kind of encourage some kind of chance things here. And if there's anybody listening out here, what I want to do, Andrew is going to pick a track at random. And what I want to do is, if you can, before you listen to this part of the podcast, email your guess or DM or whatever to the Art Arbor team. And if you guess correctly, I will mail you a free signed CD.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what this is going to be. I don't even know what this is, but if you're going to guess correctly about the tune that Andrew plays from the record, you've got a 1 in 9 chance. I don't know what that works out to percentage wise, but a 1 in 9 chance. And Andrew is gonna pick a tune, and go ahead and you can send or comment your guesses or what have you. But if you guess correctly, I'll send you a free signed CD.
All right, pause right now and then send your guess, because I'm sharing the record right now.
Well, we look forward to hearing who guesses correctly with the final track here that you're hearing now. It'll be a fun little engagement online. And look forward to Jordan connecting with some of you if you're listening out there. If you made it this far in the podcast.
That impresses me. If you made it this far in the podcast, I'm very impressed with you. And maybe, I don't know, should this be 2 episodes or whatever, or maybe just 1? Because it's long, man.
Yeah.
We've actually gone longer before in the past.
Okay, great.
So we usually chop this up. People will they will find us. They'll find this moment for sure.
All right, cool. I'm down.
But yes, if people have made it this far, then you know at this point that this is Rooted, the Art Arbor podcast, episode 11, featuring the great Dr. Jordan VanHemert. You can hear him on all places that music can be found online, but I hope that you also consider supporting his work on his website. We'll have all of these things linked down below in the description, and you can buy a CD. You can Jordan has mentioned that vinyls are being pressed, so if you're into that, then that's an option. You can support by coming to the tour, or even just listening to this podcast. I'm sure is a good way to show support. But again, we really thank Jordan for his time today. Really great conversation, and more to come, and continuing to expand our Arbor and Art Arbor here. So with that, we'll play out a little bit more, and we will wrap episode 11.
Thanks, everyone.